should start recording. So I want to thank our speakers, central office staff, our the program assistant, Michelle Ordini, the officers and members of our local chapter, and our Eastern Region student leaders, Albie Hayes and Mary Wang, and thank you to the registrants. Those of you who are not affiliated, not in those two groups of student leadership, well, actually everybody, if you could put in the chat who you are and what chapter you're from, I think that would help us a great deal in having a conversation. My goal for this session is for us to think about ways that we can look forward in chapter activities and chapter recruitment, because I think we've all learned a lot over the last now 20 months of dealing with the pandemic. And we've learned about a lot of new tools, but we've also learned a great deal about what people can tolerate and what people will want to do. And so, if you could put that in the chat, then I think we can have at least have a more of a sort of first name basis of what we're going to be talking about. So I asked Avina and Kelly, or Avina and Albie, to talk with us about the both what has been going on for Albie on the student leadership and for the national organization, and Avina at the local chapter here at TCNJ. And any of you can pipe in with questions or recommendations or anything else. For the previous sessions, I've been doing the sort of spotlighting, but I think it's a good idea to have a kind of more sort of open discussion for this particular session. And so I'll keep us all in the Hollywood Squares kind of a format. But I'm going to sort of lead some questions, and then I have some sort of faculty advisor recommendations, as well as some reports about what people have been doing throughout the region. So Albie, if I could start with you, could you kind of give us a sense? One of the things I'm really curious about is that transition between being involved in a local chapter and then moving into national student leadership, and sort of what kinds of opportunities you see for local chapters now that you've worked at that that board level, national level.
So I don't know if it's been kind of explicitly stated, but my official job title is student representative of the Eastern region. So anything in like New England and like the eastern side of the United States. And Mary Wang, who's in this too, is the assistant student representative of the same region. So we work together to do events, to kind of plan communication between committees, make Facebook posts, all sorts of things. And the kind of like big difference that I've noticed is the levels of organization. I come from a very, very tiny like chapter. It's the Iota Omega chapter. I think we have like 10 people. So when it comes to organizing, a lot of that falls on our like faculty leader. Whatever we've done in the past is what we continue to do. That's not to say we're kind of restricted in that sense. It's just what we know works is what we are able to do. But when it comes to the student leadership position and student leadership in general, there's a lot more room, like wiggle room, kind of to do the things that fascinate you, the things that you want to experiment with, having like the trial and error and being able to test it out on a wider audience. So, one of the things we're working on right now is we do one sort of academic centric item at the convention, and we do one social aspect, and we've actually been focusing more on the social aspect. Like we do, sometimes they do game nights, sometimes they do pizza parties, and trying to figure out what works for everyone at that wider scale, but having a lot more voices talking about that is something really kind of fun that we get to do. So it's not all business all the time. which is a little bit different because with the single like chapter level, it's very like, what can we get done in the time that we have? Whereas this is a little more kind of expansive.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful. And then Avina, you became active in the chapter at the height of the pandemic. So were there, particular things that, or particular opportunities that you saw the chapter take advantage of that sort of helped you get a sense of what Sigma Tau Delta was about, or any particular events that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, most definitely. So definitely something I really appreciated during the pandemic about our chapter is that like we were still so active. I know it was really hard to keep up student engagement during this time, but I know even so many of our like student leaders would text in the group me and we'd host events. Like a main event we have here is called like Inside Scoop, where we get to share talks, like have older students kind of give underclassmen insight as to like different courses and like what professors are like and things like that. I would say the biggest opportunity for me, and I know a lot of my other peers, was hearing more about the Sigma Tau Delta convention, because that's something I never even had heard of actually freshman year, and I would have never like. I even sometimes think about, I don't know if I would have done it if we were in person because of just the nature I feel like of being in person. There's so much going on, but online, like when I got asked to do it, I was so honored. And then the fact that our roundtable proposal was accepted and I got to make use of that opportunity, and I have friends in the department too, was very cool. And I feel that the fact that we still encouraged so many students to do it, and we were still able to host the convention online, honestly encouraged many people to do it as well, because I know for me, it's a little less daunting to speak in an online format, but also because I think just in the nature of being at home, there was like some more time to do things and plan. So that was like the biggest opportunity for me. But yeah, and I can talk more about like student engagement later on or now if you want. But our chapter was like, as I said, very active. Like we made sure to have like meetings every other week still, and I feel like we did a really good job of balancing like content-based things, like talking about authors and analyzing poetry and all that, and then balancing that with more like fun events. Like we even played Among Us, and we got Dr. Steele to play with us. Literally best part of the pandemic, when Dr. Steele played Among Us. But it was great. But things like that and like Bad Poetry Night, I think we did just a really good job of like giving people like a very good scope of what Sigma Tau Delta is like and what it has to offer, but then also like not having it sound like just another class at the end of the night, because we do have 8:30 p.m. meetings and Zoom fatigue is real. So sometimes people at the end of the day were like, I can't be on another Zoom call. But the moment they heard we were doing something fun, they were like, okay. So yeah.
Caitlin, you're on screen, and as we mentioned last time, you have been involved all the way through, and I foresee a world where you will have the next step of faculty advisor in your near future. So I don't know, were there what kinds of opportunities did you you continued to be active at the national level through the pandemic, because you are just our most recently not student advisor. You were the senior student advisor until last May. So were there particular opportunities that you saw, or differences or ways that the chapters can benefit from that sort of national involvement?
Yeah, so when I started as the Eastern student rep, my chapter at Clarion had 4 people in it. So I went from being president of a chapter with a very small number of people to representing an entire region. And I think that it's a daunting step to take sometimes, especially if, you've never done it before and you don't really know what's coming. But I stand by the fact that the opportunities that I got through Sigma Tau Delta are what got me into grad school. Because as the student rep, and then especially as the student advisor, I was able to help build the partnership with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, which was an incredible opportunity. I'm very service-centered, in my schoolwork and in my life. And so that was something that was really important to me to be able to do that. And then I think also just having the chance to even just talk to people from other chapters and see how other people do their recruiting, things like this. If you have someone even reach out to you as a student rep with an issue or a problem and getting to like talk through that with them, I think is really enlightening. And so I think like, especially if you are from a smaller chapter, putting yourself out there like that and meeting new people and seeing how the bigger schools or the bigger chapters do things can be really helpful in building your own smaller chapter and getting people to be more active.
Thanks. I mean, that's one of the goals in trying to have a symposium, right? Because, the Sigma Tau Delta National Organization and your regents, we send a lot of email, right? We send a lot of email, and there are lots of really wonderful resources that are shared. I'm pretty confident that those of you who are here, I think it's who are not people I have immediate contact with as student leaders or TCNJ members, but I think it Tyler and Sam, who I think is under the Sarah Hickey profile. You're obviously getting communication through the Facebook group, or through emails. So thank you for reading both of those. But one of the things that is a challenge is trying to figure out how to connect with local chapters. And one of the ways that you can do that is through the convention, right? Connecting chapters together. So Avina should be working with some of Albie's peers from Franklin Pierce on a roundtable, right? And in national student leadership, then you get to work with people who are from completely different schools. But one of the things that I wanted to do was to share some of the events and some of the kinds of things that people have been doing around the region. And I can start with asking sort of Avina to report the different kinds of ways that we think about events at TCNJ. I mean, one of the things that we do is we try to divide things up between things that are based on developing fellowship, things that are based on developing relationships and understanding about what faculty research is doing, and things that are intended to help mentor students toward achievements of different kinds, like the convention or scholarships. So Avina, could you talk a little bit about some of the events like that we've had in the last year and a half?
Yeah, for sure. I like how you touched upon that we had a nice balance between the three, because we definitely did. I will say for, trying to think, wow, feels like so long ago. Definitely for, in terms of like professional development, I feel like we did a good job of, I'm trying to think. We definitely like talked a lot about how to become like a better leader in Sigma Tau Delta and like English in general, in our college and beyond. And we I feel like the best thing we did was like have like upperclassmen talk about like their experiences through Sigma Tau Delta, even throughout our meetings. Like it wouldn't just be like you and Dr. Stanberg talking. Like it was a lot of older students talking about even like students who were just about to graduate, like talking to the new freshmen and like transfer students about more ways to get involved. And the best part was like we also talked a lot about like I feel like like cover letters, interviewing skills, and that's not always something you hear in your classes. But I felt like Sigma Tau Delta was almost like our meetings were like an outlet about just a channel for people to ask questions, like an open platform for that you don't And to remind people that they don't have to figure out all of this alone, especially during the pandemic. It was like very weird, like especially me being a sophomore, like for the first time, not for the first time, but like really starting to think about, you know, jobs for the future and careers. And I remember that like I got to talk to other people from the chapter about that, which was really cool because otherwise we would have all struggled alone. And that's what people said they appreciated most about our chapter, personally to me, especially when I invited them. Um, and also, the sabbatical research talk by Dr. McMahon was very cool. I remember we've had these. I know when I came freshman year too, we would go and have a presentation. I forget. I'm drawing a blank, particularly in what Dr. McMahon talked about. Where her trip was to, but I remember her doing a sabbatical talk, and the event led by Bill Souter for secondary ed people. And that's another thing. We have a lot of like education majors at the College of New Jersey, so we had a good like tie between like English people who are just English majors, but also people who are English majors with the education major, which was pretty cool. And as for fellowship goes, as I was saying, we'd have like game nights, movie nights, and even like we have a group me. Dr. Seal and Dr. Steinberg are not in that one because, you know, they want us to be able to talk amongst ourselves, but we would always do like polls. We send like funny memes in there even to this day, and that's something I wanted to talk about too, like how I feel like a lot of people felt very isolated during this time, but the moment like somebody would send a meme, like it really connected us. It's sometimes just of cats, like, I'm not gonna lie, but it really would be like, which of these cats describe your mood right now? But it was very cool because it just kept reminding me that like even though we're apart, we definitely had to make use of technology more, but we were not alone. Um, yeah. So
So to put what Avina had mentioned in context a little bit. So, you know, at every institution, faculty have different opportunities to advance their research beyond their normal obligations to be researchers and to be teacher scholars of different sorts. And so no matter what institution you're at, there's going to be some kind of competitively awarded sabbatical or faculty leave. And so one of the things that and often faculty members aren't able to take whatever research project that they've been working on and translate it into something that is public facing or that is accessible to students for a long time, because sometimes people will take a year or they'll take a 6-month sabbatical. And that is something that's part of a book project, right? So they might be, or a suite of articles in some way. So, you know, the faculty member might be away doing that research, but then might not actually be able to publish that research until years later. And so at TCNJ, we have a sabbatical series so that the semester after somebody comes back from a sabbatical, they have an opportunity to talk about their research and put it in terms that are directly intended for students in the community. And one of the things that's fun is that, you know, these get to be sort of like what I did on my summer vacation, but for academics kinds of events. And so they wind up, you know, in the last session, one of the things that Professor Steinberg had said was that, you know, it's useful as a chapter to try and find every opportunity you can to raise your profile, but especially in the humanities and in English particularly, it's important for all of us as people who are involved in English studies to think about ways to raise the profile of our discipline and to make sure that people understand that we do really important work, no matter where we are. And so by providing a forum for faculty members to come and talk about their research, we don't just have an audience that's made up of Sigma Tau Delta members. We wind up with an audience that's made up of their colleagues and of, you know, faculty in other departments and administrators, and they get to share what they've learned in a really immediate way. And we do those kinds of sabbatical series for both creative as well as critical work. So if you have writers who have leaves or who have residencies somewhere, this is a really good way of celebrating them. Albie, are there any is you mentioned that your chapter had a lot of things that they sort of do over and over again. You guys have a lot of things that you do over and over again that are really wonderful. So would you like to talk about any of those kinds of programs? You guys are always there with a Common Reader Award application every year. So could you talk a little bit about the kinds of programming that your chapter does?
Sure. So kind of just going chronologically through the year, one of the things we do is we will set up like a banned books display at our library. We usually will disperse like, one person is in charge of each kind of activity we have. So we have our banned books week display. We have, oh, it's all gone now. We have Ravens and Rivermead, which is a event that we've done a few times that has actually been awarded. And it's about, we have students at FPU and people who live in the, I believe it's called the Rivermead Retirement Home, reading the same book and then meeting to have a big discussion on it. So it's kind of a like cross-generational discussion on any types of literature. I remember the one that I did my freshman year, we did Dancing in Red Shoes Will Kill You. And we had a discussion on that. We obviously go to the convention each year. And those are just a handful of the things that we do. We also have a kind of fundraiser thing where we sell little care packages to the students at the school.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, the project that you do, the intergenerational reading, is a really wonderful project, and it's one of the projects that has won a Common Reader Award. So I just put into your chat a link to the Common Reader Award. So every year for the convention, there's a Common Reader. This year, it's the book Dear Martin by Nick Stone. And so your chapter can develop an activity that is based on the Common Reader. And there are lots of different ways of doing it. Last year, when a lot of schools had gone remote, they were still able to do Common Reader activities, even though they were doing them virtually. So I've given you a link to the Common Reader Award, and I'd really encourage you. It's not, even though the convention deadline is Monday, it's not too late to have Common Reader events. So you can complete any, you can do any Common Reader event, and you would submit the application for the award after it's complete. But you can do this all the way up until February 15th, 2022. So you have the rest of the fall semester and the first few weeks of the spring semester to do these kinds of activities. One of the things that I have prepared for all of you guys, if I can find the link that I put it on. This is a list that I've been working to develop for my own chapter for a while, but I keep forgetting. And so the Symposium has given me a really good excuse to finish it up and to start distributing it. But one of the things that, sometimes it can be good as a chapter to do is to kind of make yourself a list of things that you should be aware of when you're planning events. And so I don't know if you guys, again, like, God help me if I were like shopping for underwear recently or something like that, but I'm hoping that the screen that is in front of you is the Future of English event checklist. Thank God. Okay, so these are just some kind of general principles that are really good for events to think about. And so the link to this event is off my personal webpage, but I just put it in the chat so that you can use it. So to kind of steal, one of the things to remember is, to record your event, to make sure that you've got a picture. One of the things is that we're almost all word people, and And we're also maybe the kinds of people who get a little flustered when there's a little bit too much stimulus. I mean, I spent plenty of quiet time in the library stacks in high school trying to stay away from people. But it's a really good thing to remember to record things, right? Make sure that you take a picture and make sure that you get at least 3 pictures from any event that you can then share on social media. And this is important for broadcasting social media for your own institution, as well as for Sigma Delta. So every institution has some office that's usually associated with the president's office. And sometimes these places are called the brand management office. And so if, one of the pieces of homework that you can have is to find out who's in charge of that brand management. But make sure that you also, contact and there shouldn't be a space between English and con. I just realized that there's a typo, so I'll fix that. But, also make sure to tag the national organization, either on Twitter or Instagram. Another thing to think about is to make sure that there's some kind of accessibility. And this is something that in some ways I realized in the second session that I failed to do for this event, is that I should have activated the captioning system in Zoom. So I apologize for not doing that. But when you're scheduling an event, make sure that you make provision for a microphone. A lot of us are cultivating teaching voice, but teacher voice does not guarantee accessibility for people who are hard of hearing. Make sure that you come up with a plan for distributing information in different ways. At our institution, many of the buildings have monitors that have looping PowerPoints. So this is a way of getting people's attention, and the people who run those monitors are always looking for content. And so if you find out who they are, then this is a way of doing it. Send invitations out a month ahead of time, preferably a month and a half. Always invite your dean and your college president or the director of your alumni office to your events, right? Because first of all, they want to be seen and they want an opportunity to meet with students and families and all sorts of people. So give that to them. It can't hurt you. And the worst they can do is just ghost you and not show up. But it still puts you on their radar. It's a really good idea to find reasons to celebrate past and future members. Have any of your alumni published a book? If they have, host a reading or a book party for them. If you have aspiring creative writers and you don't necessarily have a creative writing group, or you have a creative writing group that needs more support, then you can co-host an event. We have a creative writing group on campus, and we co-hosted an event for the NCTE National Day of Writing on writing through the pandemic. And so that's a way of making partnerships. And make sure you see how the central office might be able to support your events. So there might be a way of doing a social media takeover for an event. And this is something that Albie and Mary can help you with. There are funds for common reader supports, and there are also funds to support chapter projects. It's a good idea to work together and sort of set up a style guide, right? Is there a way to make sure that you're not reinventing the wheel with every group of officers, right? Are you all committed to using gender neutral language? Plan ahead so that you know that you aren't supposed to be talking about freshmen and sophomores. That can be a way of making sure that you can do that. I'm almost done. There are only 11. Cultivate, honor, and get to know the professional staff in your department, right? They know campus processes a lot better than any faculty member does, and they can help you figure this out better than we can. Give faculty an opportunity to talk about their scholarship, or to talk about different projects that they're working on. Caitlin mentioned her dissertation director's project, and that would be an amazing Sigma Tau Delta event. And then finally, if for your faculty advisor, encourage your faculty advisor to consider service at the national level, right? If they have an opportunity to learn about how the scholarship process works or how the convention submissions process works, they can give you more and better advice for when you apply for events or when you apply for opportunities. So those are just a few things that that I recommend that people do. And so I'll fix the typos on this, but that link is going to be its stable link, and you're free to use and distribute or make fun of me in any way that you like about that list. So Avina, did you want to add anything, or do you have corrections or things? You seem to be enjoying yourself a lot while I was talking.
No, I was just reflecting, but honestly, your underwear shopping joke made me laugh. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm very mature sometimes. But yeah, no, those were really good. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Now, so we have some people who have their cameras off, but I know who are interested in learning more about chapter activities and recruitment. So, what questions do people have?
I can speak for one thing though, in terms of like student engagement, and I guess this might not be exactly like just particular to Sigma Tau Delta, but I was gonna say that like whenever I'd encourage people to come to events, I kind of would just say like come to one event, just one event, and see what it's like. And even if they didn't like show up again, I at least was satisfied with the fact that I gave them a platform and a community that they knew they could come back to at any time. Um, and I think that's like the biggest, from what I've seen on all student organizations, or is that the biggest platform is like like having a friend group go together, because a lot of people are scared to go to things alone, just working up the courage to do that. And especially, I mean, on Zoom I guess it was a bit easier, but like walking into a physical room when like you know no one is very daunting. But the moment you have like a group of friends and then they all like inspire each other to want to go to events, I think that's kind of how like things grow. And especially I've seen that with Sigma Tau Delta, like every time there's an event, all my friends from my classes are like, are you going, and I'm like, well, I am the treasurer, so yes. But just like definitely that's the biggest thing I did though. Like I would say I'm coming, you know, like there's nothing to be worried about. And it also makes it more fun when you know some people there. But yeah, that would be my biggest piece of advice. If you have an event, just like definitely trying to get, you know, maybe tell like if you're a professor and you see like two students are close to each other, tell them both to come together, you know.
And that's, and it's a really good point also, Diane, just I'll let you talk in a second about making sure that you are inviting people who are not members to events, right? Is that, if you're hosting a poetry reading, or if you're hosting one of the events that we had this year for Banned Books Week, because we were still all a little bit nervous about being inside, and we didn't know how many people were going to be going inside the library to look at a display. Our faculty member who's in charge of secondary education encouraged us to do a challenged book read aloud. So we had a little porch reading of picture books and talked about it. And we had one every day. And it was super fun. And there were some really completely unfamiliar faces of students who had just decided they were going to stop by and meet us. And it was really wonderful. Professor Steinberg.
I was going to say, sometimes you can ask faculty members if they would be willing to give a single point of extra credit if people come to an academic event. Because one of the things I've discovered is that if a student goes alone to a social event, they feel like they look like a lonely person in search of friends. But if they go alone to an event that gives them extra credit, they're just a student going for the extra credit. And so it provides cover for people who don't know what a person, they're like, why did I go to hear this? Because she said she would give me one more point on my quiz. You know, it doesn't really affect final grades all that much, but it allows participation for people who are shy. Yeah. The other thing is food. And I cannot wait until it's safe for students to eat again, because over and over again, we would have an event with pizza or an event with zombie cookies or whatever the name of those cookies are.
Insomnia. So that's a completely different kind of cookie. I think
Okay.
that one we'd get in a lot of trouble.
Okay. Insomnia cookies, or just anything that gives people a chance to eat,
Right.
is a good thing. So,
Right. And eat food that was brought from off campus, which is
Right.
a big deal on our campus. I don't know
Right.
what kinds of food contracts you guys have, but for our particular school, food that is not made by our contractor is in significant demand.
But the English department gets a price break from a local pizza maker, who will deliver, 20 pies.
So questions, you can put them in the chat if you don't want to speak up. That's also fine. Caitlin, do you have any recommendations of programming that you still remember all these years later, things that you're...
I mean, at my current chapter at IUP, some of the things that we do that are really successful are a book sale. I know you mentioned doing one, and every year we'll go around to faculty and say, hey, whatever you don't want, give it to us. And then we have a really successful book sale every year. We also involve the undergrad members of our chapter in planning the English Graduate Organization Conference that we hold every year. So that's a really good way to promote mentorship and also to encourage them to present. So we will accept like a certain number of undergrads to present at our conference and then say, hey, you did this, now you can submit that to Sigma Tau Delta. And so I think those are the two things that we do that are still really successful even during pandemic times.
Now, is your graduate conference only for members of your local community, or is that open to people from other institutions as well?
It's open to anyone. Last year we held it virtually, and we even had some people from other countries present. So it was very successful.
Yeah, because we have a graduate program at our school. And so one of the things that we've started doing is trying to keep an eye out for smaller conferences that especially that are nearby, right?
Our CFP should be going out next month. I think I can send that to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was just going to say, one of the things that we've been doing for about 6 years now is sort of taking advantage of all of the work that Moravia College does for their annual. They have a conference the first Saturday in December for undergraduates on medieval and early modern studies. And it's anything basically from the fall of the Roman Empire to Jane Austen. And it can be history, it can be literature, it can be music, it can be art. But they do all the work, like they get speakers and they get food that's free, and they get they put everything into panels for you. All we really have to do, and it costs nothing, is just get a couple of carpools and get in the car and drive over there. And we have the whole day's worth of entertainment. And Moravia is only about an hour and a half away. So, and they always do it the first weekend in December, because they're in Bethlehem, PA, and that's a town that goes a little crazy at Christmas with Christmas decorations. So the whole town sort of gets Christmased up. Because Caitlin, you must be familiar with that area. So
yes, I am.
But so you can take advantage of the fact that somebody else has done the work and just arrange the carpools and go to a museum that people might want to go to, or go to a play that people want to see. You don't have to necessarily put the event together from scratch all by yourself.
Right. Now, Tyler has a question. Have students been more prone to showing up to events following our return to campus? And I think that's a variable question depending on your institution. So am I interpreting your question correctly, that you're wondering about what kind of turnout people are having at other institutions, or is your question about your particular institution? And,
I would say, well, is Tyler still typing?
I don't know, I can't,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and you're from TCNJ. Oh,
how do we not
Tyler,
know
how come we
Tyler?
don't know you?
All right. Okay. I would have said, our first chapter meeting, which we held on the patio outside so that we didn't have to worry about bad air. We had a lot of people. Would you say, I mean, Avina, would you say like 50?
Yeah, we had a good amount. It's hard to answer that question because I feel like it varies by the event. If I'm gonna be completely honest, like I feel like for the banned books on the patio and then the writing through the pandemic, we didn't have as many. And that could have been because it was during the day and people have classes during that time. So it has a lot to do with time. And I also feel like with Zoom, people sometimes would just like, join with their camera off, so it made them more susceptible to join because they were like, okay, like I can have this in the background while doing work, whereas in person you have to be like fully attentive. But it's a little bit of both. I think there were definitely I think it also has a lot to do with like, personality and personal choice because I know some people like for me used kind of the online platform to like kind of saw it as more necessary to like connect to people like because like now when I go to classes like of course I'm going to come to Sigma Tau Delta, but it's not like I feel like so lonely where I feel like oh my gosh, like I need social interaction right now. Like I could like still go out and see people, but then there was other people who what I thought was interesting who would say I don't want to go online because it made them more upset to have to like only they were confined to their own house, or they didn't see as much of a value. I'd say I don't want to phrase it that way, that sounds really negative, but they would like almost people were like I don't know, like if it was in person I'd go, but I'm not so keen on going online, I could just do my own thing. So it really varies, but we did have really good turnout, I think, especially at night, maybe because of the timing, but also I think people were so excited to see each other again in person and all the professors and you guys and everything. We still get really good turnout. um, yeah, I think it was higher on the patio than it was online.
Right.
On
I mean,
Zoom.
and one of the hardest things that people need to really keep in mind for any chapter is that it's going to be variable based on season, right? So, when by the time you get to November in the fall, then people are beginning to retreat because they're under a lot of stress. But then there are some opportunities for more kind of fellowship opportunities in December because they need some kind of stress relief that is healthy. And that's one of the things that Professor Steinberg and I thought about years ago is, what kinds of alternatives can we provide for students to have social interactions that aren't focused on studying, that are healthy, as opposed to what they might find at an off-campus event. So, we've had a good deal of success through the years, depending on the board, with things like a finals game night, or milk and cookies, or readers theater, where people come and read a scripted version
Christmas Carol.
of the Christmas Carol, or have a kind of Secret Santa with a book that is gift wrapped, but no, there's nothing on the outside that indicates anything about it. So one of the things is that you're not always going to have a full house for every event, and that's okay. Because you might have different people who show up to different kinds of events too. So that's just the way life works. Not everybody can go to everything, either because of their class schedule or because they're under too much stress.
I've often maintained, although it's very, very hard to do, that a good time for an event is the first week of February because nobody is busy yet. And nobody is saying, I really want to take a long walk outdoors, because it's the first week of February. So so people don't necessarily have plans to do very much. And so if the hard thing is that you have to plan the event in December and get the spaces before people leave campus. But when we do manage to pull that off, we usually get people who are excited and energetic. They're ready to come back for the second semester. They want a sort of semester kickoff event of some kind. And again, with luck, it might be that the second week in February, we can have an event that people eat pizza.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that, different chapters have done at different times, largely because I'm a fan of cake, is that, we'd have a birthday party for an author, right? So nobody knows when Chaucer was born. So we've had some, wonderful birthday parties in April for Chaucer, right? Because Juan that aprio the shore sota, etc. Right. Or we've had birthday parties for Shakespeare. Or you can make that into a death day party for Shakespeare, since he was so polite in making sure that they were the same. Or you can, we had a birthday party for Samuel Johnson one year, which was so fun, which you don't necessarily think, oh, Samuel Johnson, that's going to be the most fun. But we have a colleague who gets even more embarrassingly excited about Samuel Johnson than I do, who decided to start reenacting famous toasts of Samuel Johnson over the cake. And it was a ball, right? And then we had a group of students who came in and decided to have but this is what happened. So we got in trouble for saying that there was going to be cake on the signs, because the food service contract, we had a particularly aggressive enforcer of those kinds of things. And so then we had a creative group of students who decided, well, let's do Lewis Carroll and we'll have an unbirthday party with uncake. And they couldn't parse that. And so we got away with it. And we had a whole, the person who organized it dressed up in a tutu, and we had people in overalls pretending they were Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And it was a hoot. So, often the one of the things that you can do as a chapter is just kind of throw out a list of what are some of the crazy opportunities that would let us come together and have some fun around literature. And sometimes they can wind up being very serious. So like after the inauguration, the meeting we had after the inauguration, we all, as a chapter, looked at Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem, and it was wonderful. I thought that was great, and because it got us all to talk about poetry, right? And it was we were honoring a Black author. So, we were being mindful of, and in looking at the chapter reports from our region, there were lots of chapters that had events that were around Black Lives Matter. And so, there are lots of ways in which people can have events that kind of serve those three purposes of fellowship and celebration and promoting literacy.
I'm also going to say that when we celebrated Oscar Wilde's birthday, we contracted with a company that makes fortune cookies, and we sent them a bunch of quotes of Oscar Wilde, and they put them inside the fortune cookies. And you could do that with any author, where you could just open a fortune cookie and it could be a Shakespearean quote, that kind of thing. But those are a big hit, and it doesn't cost that much because they just run them off and then stick them in the cookies.
Right. We could have also sold green carnations too. That would have been a good one, right? But you can also look for partnerships. That was an event that I think that the chapter officers wound up doing something with PRISM, the gay, lesbian and transgender alliance on campus for Oscar Wilde. So there are lots of really interesting partnerships. So it's 12:50. Thank you all for coming. Tyler, I don't know who you are, so come and visit my office so that I can meet you. And Sam, thank you for attending. And Avina's posse, thank you for coming. And this has been wonderful. Caitlin, thank you so much. And so in 10 minutes, there's going to be an Ask Me Anything session. So, you know, I'll be here. If there is an audience for that, I will report it, but there also may not be an audience for it as well. So, but thank you all.